Every summer, the same thing happens. Mid-July rolls around, the spring garden is fading, and gardeners look at their patios and half-empty pots and assume the growing season is basically over. The tomato transplants are gone from the garden center. The lettuce has bolted. The peas have crisped. It's enough to make some people think they've missed their window entirely. But the truth is, mid-July is one of the most underrated planting moments of the entire year. Music. Container gardeners have a real advantage here. Pots warm faster, drain cleaner, and let gardeners start a second season without ripping anything out of the ground. That means faster germination, fewer diseases, cleaner harvests, better moisture control, and the ability to move plants exactly where they need to be as the light changes into fall. A garden bed at this time of year is often crowded, tired, and full of pest pressure. A fresh pot with new potting mix is a completely clean slate. No disease history, no weed bank, no compaction, just optimal soil at the exact temperature the seeds want. In today's video, we're counting down 12 container vegetables you can still sow in mid-July for a big harvest before frost. These aren't token plantings. These are real dinner plate crops that finish in time, thrive in a pot, and reward busy gardeners who thought they were too late. Music. Make sure to stick around until the very end. Not only will we reveal our number one pick, but we're also going to share the 25-day guaranteed win that turns any empty pot into a legitimate harvest before mid-August. The final crop on this list is so perfectly suited for mid-July sowing that many container gardeners never plant it any other way. Let's get started. Music. Kicking off our list at number 12, we have bush cucumbers. Most people picture cucumbers as sprawling summer vines that needed to be planted back in May. But experienced container gardeners know mid-July is a perfectly viable sow window for the right cultivars. Bush cucumbers like Space Master, Bush Champion, and Salad Bush finish in just 50 to 55 days from seed. That means a mid-July sowing delivers first cukes around Labor Day and keeps croppy until frost. Garden beds struggle here. The soil is still holding May weeds, spring pests are established, and cool ground slows germination. Cucumber beetles that overwintered in the bed are already active. Containers flip that equation completely. A black grow bag on a warm patio hits 80 degrees in the root zone. That triggers germination in under a week. Drainage stays clean, weed pressure is nearly zero, and bush varieties never need a trellis. Music. There's another quiet advantage. Container cucumbers dodge the humid, still air that fuels powdery mildew in a crowded July garden. Elevated on a patio, the vines get better airflow, cleaner leaves, and healthier fruit. A 5 to 7 gallon pot at least 12 inches deep, with 6 to 8 hours of sun, produces cucumbers every 2 to 3 days once fruiting starts. One plant can carry a household through September. Sometimes the secret to a big fall cucumber harvest isn't sowing earlier. It's picking a bush cultivar and giving it a warm pot in the middle of July, when the soil is finally at the temperature cucumbers wanted all along. Coming in at number 11, we have kohlrabi. Most people assume kohlrabi is a spring vegetable that has already come and gone. But surprisingly, fall kohlrabi is the better crop. Spring bulbs turn fibrous and hot when summer heat hits, and gardeners often end up with woody, disappointing globes. Mid-July sowing delivers a sweeter, denser, bigger bulb because it finishes in cooling fall weather. Music. Extension guidance is direct on this. For fall crops, plant seed directly in the container in July, and a late July planting will be ready to harvest before a hard freeze. Early cultivars like early white Vienna finish in 45 to 60 days. Giant types finish in about 60. Either way, mid-July is the sweet spot window that lines the crop up with the exact fall weather it thrives in. Garden ground fights you at this time of year. Compacted clay, established weeds, and flea beetles hammering brassica seedlings. Containers give kohlrabi a clean, weed-free start with loose potting mix and no pest history in the soil. Drainage stays sharp, which brassicas love. A row cover pinned across the pot for the first 2 weeks blocks flea beetles cold and gives the young seedlings a stress-free start. Music. An 8 to 10 inch deep pot at 3 to 5 gallons, 1 plant per station, seeds at 1/4 to 1/2 inch deep, 6+ hours of sun, and 60 days later a crisp apple-sweet bulb is ready. Sometimes the secret to a great kohlrabi harvest isn't planting in April. It's planting in July when the plant can finish in the weather it actually wants. Music. Next up at number 10, we have bush determinate tomatoes. Most people assume tomato season is fully locked in by June, and a July planting is a lost cause. But experienced container gardeners know the right cultivar changes everything. Bush Early Girl matures in 52 days. Tumbler cherries hit ripe fruit at 45 to 55 days from transplant. Patio Choice is bred specifically for a small pot. Here's the trick. This one requires a transplant, not a seed sow. Grab a 4 to 6 week old bush determinate from a garden center or a self-started seedling. Drop it into a 5-gallon pot in mid-July, and clusters ripen by early September, months before frost in most zones. Music. Garden beds punish late tomato plantings with soil-borne disease, splashing rain, and inconsistent moisture that stresses the plant right at fruit set. Containers solve every one of those problems. Fresh potting mix means zero disease history. Drainage is precise, the pot warms faster than heavy ground, and the plant can be repositioned into the sunniest corner of the patio. A 5-gallon pot minimum, 12 to 14 inches deep, 6 to 8 hours of sun, 1 determinate plant per pot. Fresh potting mix with a scoop of slow-release fertilizer sets the plant up for a fast finish. No staking needed. A simple cage keeps the branches upright when clusters get heavy. Water consistently, a determinate in a hot pot can drink a full gallon on a 90-degree day. Sometimes the secret to a mid-July tomato harvest isn't starting earlier. It's picking a 52-day bush variety and giving it a warm container in a bright spot. Moving down to number 9, we have beets. Most people think beets are strictly a spring crop planted in cool soil. But surprisingly, mid-July through mid-August is the classic fall sowing window, and beets actually taste better as a fall crop. A light frost or two sweetens the roots dramatically. Music. Days to maturity sit at 50 to 60 from direct seed. A mid-July sowing finishes by early September, and the roots hold in the container all the way to hard freeze. There's a bonus harvest too. Thinnings become edible baby beet greens starting at day 25, so the pot is producing food within a month of sowing. Garden ground rarely gives beets what they want. Rocks, compaction, and heavy clay force twisted, small roots. Containers deliver the loose, deep, uniform soil beets need to size up cleanly. Drainage stays fast, weed pressure stays low. Harvesting is a clean lift, not a dig. A 3 to 5 gallon pot at 10 to 12 inches deep. densely seeded and thinned to 3-inch spacing, with 6 hours of sun. Cultivars like Detroit Dark Red and Early Wonder thrive here. Chioggia gives you that pink and white striped bullseye slice that turns any salad into something worth photographing. Water consistently because uneven moisture is what makes beets turn woody and tough. Sometimes the secret to sweet beets isn't spring planting, it's a mid-July container and a light October frost that turns the sugars up on every single root. Music. Coming in at number 8, we have bush snap beans. Most people assume bean season ended when the spring row finished. But experienced container gardeners know bush beans are one of the fastest finishing crops on the list. Provider hits 50 days. Contender and Blue Lake bush finish in 50 to 60. Mid-July sowing gives green pods by early September in zones 6 through 9. Here's what makes this a container win. Beans germinate in 5 days flat on a warm patio because the pot holds 80-degree soil while the garden bed is still cooler and shaded by nearby plants. Drainage is critical for bean roots, which rot quickly in wet ground. Containers deliver clean, fast drainage every time. Music. A 5-gallon pot at 10 to 12 inches deep, 3 to 4 plants per pot. Seeds an inch deep, 6 to 8 hours of sun. Pods hang cleanly above the soil, easy to spot, easy to pick. No slug damage, no mud splash, just clean pods every 2 to 3 days once cropping starts. And because bush beans fix nitrogen through root nodules, the pot ends the season richer than it started, perfect priming for a full greens crop right after. Sometimes the secret to a full bean harvest isn't gambling on early spring weather. It's a warm mid-July pot and a 50-day cultivar that beats first frost with weeks to spare. Next up at number 7, we have summer squash and zucchini. Most people picture squash as a sprawling June crop that demands 10 square feet of garden space. But surprisingly, a single bush cultivar in a 10-gallon pot, cropped in mid-July, absolutely thrives and outproduces almost any other pick on the list per square foot. Music. Days to first fruit run 45 to 55 from direct sowing. Cultivars like Raven zucchini, Sunburst pattypan, and 8-ball round zucchini are compact enough for a container. Once fruiting begins, expect a new squash every 3 to 5 days from a single plant, all the way to frost. Garden ground at this time of year is a minefield for squash. Squash vine borer peaks in July. Powdery mildew is waiting in the soil. Weeds are established. Containers reset the whole equation. Fresh potting mix means no disease legacy. A wrapped stem base blocks the borer, and a light-colored pot keeps root temps sane during a heat dome. A 10-gallon pot at 12 to 14 inches deep, 1 plant, seeds half an inch deep, 8 hours of sun and steady water. Fertilize every 2 weeks once flowers appear. A heavy-feeding squash in a container will empty its soil bank fast, and a hungry plant produces small, tapered fruit. Look for cultivars labeled powdery mildew, resistant to squeeze an extra 2 to 3 weeks of production out of the fall. Sometimes the secret to a heavy squash harvest isn't a bigger garden. It's a single well-fed container getting a mid-July head start and outproducing every neighbor's tired June planting. Music. Coming in at number 6, we have turnips grown for greens and roots. Most people think of turnips as an old-fashioned root vegetable that takes forever. But experienced container gardeners know turnips are actually 2 harvests from 1 sowing. Greens at 30 to 35 days. Roots at 50 to 60 days. Both improve dramatically after a light frost. Mid-July is fine in zones 5 through 7, and it kicks off the harvest window earlier than an August sowing would. Cultivars like Purple Top White Globe give you both greens and roots. 7 Top is bred specifically for cut and come again greens. Music. Garden beds struggle with brassica pest pressure in July. Flea beetles chew holes in every leaf. Compacted soil deforms the roots. Containers dodge both problems. A row cover thrown over the pot for the first 14 days blocks flea beetles cold. Loose potting mix lets roots swell cleanly into perfect globes. A 3 to 5 gallon pot at 10 inches deep, densely seeded a ½ inch down, thinned to 3-inch spacing for roots, 6 hours of sun. Cut greens starting day 30, pull roots starting day 50. And because turnips actually sweeten after a light frost, the last pulls in October are the best tasting ones of the whole run. Sometimes the secret to a productive fall pot isn't planting one crop, it's planting a crop that gives you dinner twice from a single sowing. Moving down to number 5, we have bunching scallions. Most people picture scallions as a supermarket item, not a home crop. But surprisingly, bunching scallions are one of the most container-friendly and frost-tolerant crops in the entire fall lineup. They don't form bulbs, they just grow straight up as green stalks until you pull them. Music. Days to a pencil-thick pull run 55 to 70 from direct seed. A mid-July sowing hits harvest by late September, and the plants shrug off hard frost. That means a single pot supplies scallions well into November in most zones. Garden ground makes scallions harder than they should be. Weed competition is brutal on skinny alliums. Rain splashes mud into the leaves. Containers keep them clean, weed-free and elevated. Drainage stays perfect. Potting mix stays loose enough for effortless pulling. A 3-gallon pot at 8 inches deep, densely seeded in a 2-inch wide band a ½ inch down. Thinned to about 1-inch spacing, 6 hours of sun. Evergreen white bunching and nabachan are both reliable cultivars. Pull whole plants as needed, and the remaining bunch keeps sizing up. Left in place, the pot self-divides into a perennial clump that can carry into a second season. Sometimes the secret to endless scallions isn't a bigger garden. It's a single dense pot on a sunny step, cropped for 2 months straight into November. Music. Coming in at number 4, we have southern peas, also called cowpeas. Most people assume peas are strictly a cool spring crop that already came and went. But experienced container gardeners know southern peas are a completely different animal. They thrive in the exact heat that kills English peas, and mid-July is inside the official recommended planting window for zones 7 through 9. Cultivars like Pink Eye Purple Hull and California Black Eye mature in 60 to 70 days for green shell pods. Some fast bush types finish green in as little as 50 to 55 days. And here's the bonus. Southern peas fix their own nitrogen. The pot ends the season richer than it started. Music. Garden ground has one big weakness for legumes right now. Wet feet in a summer thunderstorm rot the roots overnight. Containers deliver fast, sharp drainage that keeps southern peas thriving through storm cycles. They also stay productive through 95-degree days when green beans stall out completely. A 5 to 7 gallon pot at 10 to 12 inches deep, one plant, seeds an inch deep, 6 to 8 hours of sun. Green pods start in September. Left on the vine longer, the pods dry down into shelling seed for winter storage. A single pot can put a jar of dried cowpeas on the pantry shelf by October. Sometimes the secret to a mid-July legume harvest isn't fighting the heat. It's picking a crop that treats a heat dome as a green light. Breaking into the top 3 at number 3, we have Swiss chard. This is the crop that solves the single biggest failure mode of mid-July planting. Most people picture leafy greens as impossible in summer heat because they bolt and turn bitter. But surprisingly, Swiss chard will not flower until the plant has lived through an entire winter. Bolting is definitionally impossible in the crop's first season. Music. That changes everything. Chard sown in mid-July delivers baby leaves at 30 days, full leaves at 55 days, and continues cropping cut and come again all the way to a hard freeze in mid-November. A single 5-gallon pot supplies 8 to 12 leaves per week for months. That's abundance in a single container. Garden beds bring their usual problems: slug damage on the low outer leaves, splashing rain that stains the crop with soil, compaction that slows root development. Containers eliminate every one of these. Elevated pots keep slugs off. Fresh potting mix means clean leaves. Drainage keeps chard happy through fall storms. A 5-gallon pot at 10 to 12 inches deep, 3 to 4 plants thinned to 4 to 6 inch spacing, half-inch seeding, 6 hours of sun. Bright Lights and Ford Hook Giant are dependable cultivars. Bright Lights in particular puts on a genuine ornamental show: red, yellow, orange, and pink stems that look like a flower arrangement while still delivering pounds of food per pot. Sometimes the secret to a real fall green supply isn't fighting bolt. It's growing the one leafy green that cannot bolt in its first season. Music. Coming in at number 2, we have Malabar spinach. Most people think spinach is over for the year the moment temperatures cross 80 degrees. But experienced container gardeners know Malabar spinach is the heat-loving substitute that carries the whole spinach category through summer and deep into fall. It looks like spinach, it cooks like spinach, and it absolutely thrives in the exact weather that kills regular spinach dead. Music. Days to first harvest run 55 to 70 from seed, faster from a transplant. Once vining starts, the crop is cut and come again until frost. A mid-July sowing puts leaves on the plate by early September and keeps producing tender greens through October in most zones. Here's where a container becomes a genuine game-changer. Malabar climbs. A 6-foot trellis inside a 7 to 10-gallon pot turns a single square foot of floor space into a vertical wall of edible leaves. That's balcony gardening at its finest. No garden bed required, no horizontal footprint to defend. Drainage matters here because the vine roots resent soggy ground. A pot delivers exactly what Malabar wants. A 12-inch deep pot, 7 to 10 gallons, seeds a half-inch down and pre-soaked overnight, 6 hours of sun with afternoon shade tolerated. The red-stemmed variety is a genuine patio showpiece, glossy leaves and crimson stems climbing a bamboo trellis in the corner of a balcony. Sometimes the secret to summer spinach isn't fighting the heat. It's growing a crop that treats July as its favorite month. Music. And finally, taking the crown at number 1, we have radishes. If there is one crop that pays off the mid-July sow window with mathematical certainty, this is it. Radishes are the guaranteed 25-day win of the entire list, and they are the reason no empty container should sit unused this month. Extension guidance is unusually direct on this one. Radishes are fast-growing crops harvestable 3 to 5 weeks after planting, 25 days from seed to plated radish. That's faster than any other food crop outside of microgreens. A sowing today puts crisp radishes on the plate before the end of the month. Music. Garden beds work fine for radishes, but rarely produce the picture-perfect roots that gardeners want. Rocks split the roots. Compacted soil produces woody, small radishes. Weeds crowd the delicate seedlings. Containers solve every one of those problems instantly. Loose potting mix lets the roots swell cleanly into a perfect sphere. Drainage keeps them from splitting after rain. And the elevated pot warms faster while staying cooler at the surface with a light mulch of straw. A single 2-gallon pot, just 6 inches deep, densely sown at 1-inch spacing and thinned to 2 inches, 6 hours of sun, produces roughly 60 radishes in 25 days. That's a legitimate 2-week salad supply from a container smaller than a dinner plate. Cultivars like Cherry Belle, French Breakfast, and Champion are foolproof. Music. Here's why radishes take the #1 spot. Every other crop on this list carries some conditional risk. A bean might race the frost, a tomato needs a transplant. A cowpea needs zone 7. Radishes carry none of that. 25 days, 4 inches of soil, any pot, any zone, any July sowing. Sow today, eat by August. The pot is empty again in time for one more crop before winter. Sometimes the secret to a mid-July harvest isn't complicated planning. It's dropping a packet of radish seeds into any pot with drainage and letting a 25-day clock do the work. Music. The biggest mistake container gardeners make in July is assuming the season is over, that the window closed in May, that the patio is done producing until next spring. But sometimes the calendar lies. Mid-July is not the end of the growing year. It's the start of an entirely new second season, one that container gardens are uniquely positioned to run. You don't need acres of land, a full-sized backyard, or a spring do-over. Sometimes a few well-placed pots on a patio, a balcony rail, or a sunny step can outperform a whole garden bed that ran out of steam in June. A single 2-gallon pot of radishes, a 5-gallon chard, a 10-gallon zucchini, a trellised Malabar climbing up a rail. That's a real fall harvest, sown this week, eaten by frost. Music. Once you experience how productive container gardening can become in the second half of summer, you'll start seeing patios, balconies, porches, and sunny corners in a completely different way. Every empty pot becomes a countdown clock to another harvest. Every hour of afternoon, sun becomes a growing asset. Abundance stops being a spring-only idea. If this video helped you, hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It genuinely helps the channel reach more gardeners who thought they missed their window. Which of these 12 crops are you planning to sow first this week? Let us know down in the comments. Radishes for the fast win, chard for the full supply, or Malabar spinach for the vertical wall of greens. In our next video, we'll reveal the best container soil recipe for a second season fall harvest, so July sowings finish strong right up to first frost. That soil mix alone is often the difference between a token harvest and a genuinely abundant one. And it's the same recipe experienced container gardeners quietly use every fall. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next garden.